It's been 2 weeks since Mom started to drag Claire to community programs. This was heavily influenced by Aunt Minnie's persistent chatter over the phone that Mom's baby girl is disconnected with the universe and she needs guidance in order to find her anchor. I personally think it has nothing to do with any spiritual stuff that my aunt is crazy about, and my mom knows it well herself. Claire is fine in every other way. She can point out the differences between lions and tigers, happily shouting orange and tiger stripes when I show her picture books. She's also curious and adventurous like any other kid her age. It didn't make sense that she will not try to walk. But Claire, healthy and happy, never even attempted to stand, even though she was talking just fine. Ever since Claire was 14 months old, Mom had tried to coax her into standing. She would sit in front of Claire, smile, and encourage her over and over again. Claire had only giggled and focused on the toy in her hand every time. As days flew by without any more progress, Mom tried the hospital and signed up for a program in the Child Development Center. It didn't work either. Saturday was another day at the spiritual community program for Claire. I had noticed Mom had bags under her eyes as she carried Claire to the car. A few days ago, Mom told me they were learning how to breathe at that program, and I can tell Mom was going to snap if this goes on without a veil. I was looking at my phone when Mom called me. She asked me to check if the nursery's windows were open since it was going to rain soon. I did what I was told and stood up from the couch. I could see the sky was already gray with clouds. Claire's room is upstairs, across from mine. I aimed at my bed, chucked my phone, and walked straight into the nursery. The windows were open. I didn't hesitate on closing them, and I was starting to get out when my feet got stuck in one of Claire's toys. I instinctively looked down. But soon, I noticed something other than a stuffed crocodile on my foot. There were faint red-brown stains on the floor. Not vivid enough to catch attention, but there when you knew to look. And they stretched across the room. The stains were an odd shape. It was far from simple droplets you get from spilling something. No, it looked like something was dragged endlessly all around the nursery in a big circle. Maybe Claire had something on her knees while she was playing in a room. But the track was a perfect circle, and I was sure Mom wouldn't let Claire play with spoiled clothes.
I decided to let Mom know when she came back. I was just turning around when I heard a crash in my room. I froze. The cause of the sound was none other than my phone. It was on the floor. Maybe it landed wrong and slipped from my bed. I was pretty sure it fell on the middle of the bed, though. The house seemed a lot bigger, the hallway taller as I stepped into my room. I picked up my phone, my mind replaying the strange stains. From downstairs, I heard Mom calling that she was back. The rain had started falling just a few minutes after I closed the window. I rushed out to pass Mom an umbrella. She was annoyed about today's session, and I forgot about the stains. I only remembered it in the evening when I was playing with Claire. Claire had a princess doll in her fist, and she moved it across the air. But then, as if she was struck, she made a face before gently lowering the doll to the ground. I watched as Claire dragged the doll on the ground, her face furrowed in concentration. The cotton doll was now sprawled on its hands and knees, like Claire. "Like me," Claire declared to the doll. "1, 2, 3, good." "Claire," I asked, amused, "why is the princess crawling?" Claire stared at me with wide eyes, her mouth half open. Then she crossed her arms with a pout. 1, 2, 3, good. "But she has feet," I pointed out. I reached for the poor doll, whose yarn hair was now dusty, and made her stand on my knee. "See, she can stand." I pulled the doll away from Claire's reach and started to make it take little steps. "And she can walk." "No, like me!" Claire's cheeks were getting redder, and I realized I made a mistake. Too late. She burst into tears, and Mom rushed into the living room, scooping up Claire in her arms while shooting me a look. "Mom, there are stains on the nursery floor," I informed her, leaning against the sofa. "If Claire drags her dolls on the ground like this, all of her toys will be covered in them soon." Mom frowned and nodded, her hands still supporting Claire. "I'll clean it up later," she said, setting Claire on the couch. "In the meantime, you can finish your chores." I wanted to say something more, but Mom's tired eyes stopped me. After dinner, Claire played quietly on the living room rug. A frog doll had joined the princess doll. I tried to push the memory of the stains aside, trying not to notice as Claire made the dolls crawl and stumble over the carpet. 1, 2, 3. Good, she chanted, voice light but rhythmic. Something about it made my chest tighten. I told myself she was just repeating what she had learned, a harmless mimicry, but the pattern in her voice felt deliberate, as if she was teaching the dolls. Few days later, I woke up in the middle of the night. I had to use the bathroom. I was heading right when I noticed the nursery door open. In the darkness, the toys littered on the floor were visible, but the door blocked me from seeing her bed. Voices were coming from the room, inaudible from where I was standing, but I could hear it was not one but two. Was it Mom? Even though I gave myself the most logical answer, I knew better. It can't be Mom. Mom won't talk to Claire in the middle of the night. I couldn't even swallow as I took a step, then another. The voices didn't stop. My feet still just a few feet away from entering the room. That's when I was able to see it. Claire was awake, on the floor on her hands and knees, crawling. And beside her was a shape larger than Claire, its back hunched and head ducked in an uncomfortable angle. It had long, scraggly hair that looked damp, touching the floor. Together, they moved their left hand forward. Then they tugged themselves forward. 1, then right hand forward. 2. The thing purred, and I saw the truth. Claire doesn't walk because the thing that taught her how to move never had feet.
Years ago, my brother disappeared. He was 34 at the time. Adults can get up and leave whenever they like for whatever reason. He left a simple note behind saying he was looking for something and that he still loved his family even though he needed to leave for a while. I've gotten 2 letters in the past 12 years from him saying he was still alive. Although deep in the back of my mind, I assumed those letters might not be from him. A knock came at the door in the middle of the night. My son slept like the dead, so it didn't wake him up. I had no idea who it might be. The idea of a certain familiar face being on the other side never even crossed my mind. Maybe my neighbors needed something. When I opened the door, I saw a man whom I almost mistook for my late father. He had the same high cheekbones and sandy brown hair. My mouth fell open, unable to form words. "Sorry, it's been so long," he spoke and showed a strained smile. My hands flew to his face to see if he was really there. The brother I thought was dead had changed so much in those years he had been gone. Before, he was a bit on the chubbier side with messy, unkempt hair. Back then, you would never assume he worked as a cop and then later as a detective. Now, he had the look of one, or at least one you would see on a classic detective show. He had lost the weight, professionally styled his hair, and wore a blue button-down shirt that matched his eyes. "What the hell?" I hissed. I kept my voice low and took hold of the front of his shirt, giving it a little shake. He had always been on the shorter side, so it had been easy to manhandle him. My brother raised a hand, giving my chest a playful push, trying to get the shaking to stop. I took his wrist and pushed up his shirt sleeve. He was bruised all over, with new scars up and down his arm as if he had lost a few fights with a rabid animal. What happened? These are recent. I said, my mind was racing 1,000,000 miles per second. Was he kidnapped? Trafficked? Who hurt him? What had he been doing while he was gone? What the hell happened to my brother? I'm fine. He lied. He took a step and his legs faltered. I needed to support his weight and started to get him to the empty bedroom upstairs to rest. The questions could wait until he sat down. I helped him on the side of the bed, looking him over more. The first few buttons of his shirt were undone, showing he wore a few necklaces, which I thought was odd. He never would have worn jewelry before. He also pierced his ears. 2 black, simple studs were on each side. I shook my head, even more confused by all of this. How did he change so much? It wasn't just his appearance. He was far calmer than before. I loved my brother, but he got annoyed really easily. I'm sorry, he said again, with his hands held tightly in front of him, clearly guilty over leaving for so many years. Carson was worried about you, Charlie, I replied with crossed arms. I wanted to be angry, but it felt right to be able to call him by his nickname again. No matter what, I still loved him. He showed a tired smile that hurt my heart. He really did look like our father, and I was a bit jealous of how gracefully he aged. When did my short, chubby brother turn into a model? I feared his new looks were the reason why he may have been forcibly away for so many years. I wish I had a good reason. How many years was it again? I think I lost track of time. He trailed off, looking away as if trying to do a hard math problem. What do you mean by here? Time works the same everywhere. It's been 12 years, and honestly, I'm just glad you're back. I don't need a reason. I shrugged. You're a bad liar. I smacked him upside the head. I'm being a good brother. Of course I want to know why you left, but I know you need time to recover. I threatened to hit him again, but he just softly laughed while holding up his hands. Normally, this sort of thing would get us into a fight. I couldn't get over how much he mellowed out. Let me show you what I learned while I was gone. He stood up, and I didn't really care about any neat tricks he had up his sleeve. I wanted him to rest and then tell us what he was doing all these years, in that order. He pulled out a slip of paper from his pocket and asked me to rip it into tiny pieces. I humored him and dumped the pile on the dresser. I watched as he then took a piece of chalk and drew a perfect circle on the top of the dresser. I was impressed. He was never the artsy kind of person. A circle that perfect would be hard for most people to do. He placed the pieces of paper in the middle of the circle and then started to write odd symbols around it, causing me to frown. Did he get caught up in a cult? Did they only let him go now to recruit more members? Those thoughts disappeared when he softly spoke a single foreign word, and all the pieces of paper snapped back into place as if they hadn't been ripped apart. He looked up, beaming, proud of the display. I wasn't sure if I should call a priest or a doctor to get my head looked at. It was special paper? It had to be, I said, shaking my head. Pick out something in the room and damage it. I'll fix it. I stared at him as if he had grown a second head. Was this some sort of scam? So far, he hadn't asked for money. A framed family photo sat next to the lamp on the dresser. I had long since scanned it as a backup, but the physical photo of our parents was important to me. I decided to trust my brother, regardless of how crazy it sounded. He didn't look stressed when I took the photo out of the frame and ripped it in half. I placed it in the middle of the chalk circle. He erased a few symbols and rewrote new ones. He also used a different word. Like the paper before, the photo moved on its own and snapped back into place. My legs felt weak. I slowly sat down at the edge of the bed, trying to make sense of what I just saw. So, you're like a wizard or something now? I asked slowly. Or something, he confirmed. I stood up, suddenly decided I needed one of the beers I had in the fridge downstairs. I grabbed two, but Charlie refused the one I offered to him. I had even more questions, but it was late and he didn't want to go into too many details. "Remember the first unsolved case I worked on?" he asked once I sat down again with a cold drink in my hand. I nodded. From what I remember, the bodies of young girls had been found with photos that mysteriously showed up in different police stations. They didn't release that information to the public. Aside from myself, all our family members worked in law enforcement, so I had connections to hear details that didn't get released. I hired a person claiming he could talk to the dead. Turns out, he was a necromancer. We found the bodies and, well, other stuff happened. We fell silent for a very long time. I then punched his arm hard. "Other stuff? What do you mean by other stuff? Necromancers are real? What the hell did you get up to?" I was fuming because I was so far behind in all the details. "Sorry, it's just personal. Something happened in that case that upset him, and I just couldn't stop thinking about it. He disappeared, and I kept looking for him. By chance, I met the one who made him into what he was and decided to learn magic from him. Fee wanted to turn me into a necromancer too, but it turns out I'm really not suited to it." He said casually, as if any of this made sense to me. It felt like I was missing out on a lot of details, or I might even ever fully understand, even if he tried to explain it to me. Okay, so magic was real, as well as necromancers. I thought my head might explode if I heard anything else too weird that night. "Where did you go? You talked about it like you were on a different planet or something. Are these necromancers aliens?" At this point, aliens may not be that unreasonable. At first, he shook his head, then stopped to think. "Not from space. You know the whole multiverse theory, right?" Charlie glanced at me hopeful. I stood up, walked across the room, and closed the door behind me. I needed to pace around the house gathering my thoughts for a full 10 minutes before I went back into the room with him. It looked like he might have fallen asleep sitting up, and I woke him by opening the door. "Okay, I think I'm good," I stated. "You're a bad liar," I wanted to scream. Until a few hours beforehand, the only thing I worried about was if my son would ever be able to get a partner and taxes. And now, I needed to face the idea of magic and monsters being real. Placing my hands on my hips to steady myself, I went over what I had found out so far. "Okay, so you met a necromancer because of a case you worked on. He disappeared, you tried to find him, and got caught up in all this magic stuff. Since you weren't in the same universe as us, you lost track of time and all that. Am I missing anything?" I asked, and he shook his head. "Charlie." I let out a long sigh. This was hard to swallow, but better than the idea that he was kidnapped and sold into some kind of slavery. He thought the pause between us meant something else. Glancing up at him, I saw how guilty he looked and so damn tired. "I'm sorry. I should have come back sooner." "I can understand if you hate me for leaving you two behind," he admitted softly, hands in his lap and unable to meet my gaze. "Did you find him, at least? The person who got you mixed up in all this?" I asked, arms crossed, trying not to let my anger show. "Yes. But he has memory issues. It'll take a while longer to get through to him. I was in the area, so I thought I would drop by, unaware so much time had passed." I sighed again, listening to him. My brother had always been like this. It was why I didn't want him to become a cop. I'd hoped his height problems kept him from that career, but he was just tall enough for the job. He was stupid, got angry easily, but refused to leave someone alone if they needed help. This felt a bit different than all the other times he put his neck out there for someone. "What's the name of this necromancer you seem to have fallen head over heels for?" I asked, losing the will to be upset. "Neff, and I'm not..." I watched as different emotions came across his face in the dark room. A realization hit him like a truck. My brother had always been stupid when it came to certain things. I would have hoped he wouldn't be dense enough to be aware of his feelings for a person he disappeared from his family to chase after. Slowly, I watched as his face started to grow a bright shade of red as he raised his hands, trying to hide his shame. "I'm so stupid," he muttered to himself. I've never seen my brother have any romantic feelings towards anyone, male or female. I had always assumed he would die alone, dedicated to his work of helping others. I wasn't sure if I should be happy he finally found someone, even if it didn't work out between them. He was able to learn magic, so that was something. Yes, you are. But I'm glad you're back, I told him. He smiled and appeared so damn tired it hurt my chest. How about you rest up for the night? We'll figure out what to tell Carson in the morning. I'm sure he'll be happy to see you, but I don't know if we should let him in on all this magic stuff. He'll go crazy over it. Too crazy. My son had taken after his now estranged uncle in a few ways. Carson was more interested in books and TV shows than going out and dating. His nerdy obsessions would be cranked up so high that he would focus so much on what his uncle had been doing instead of anything productive. Sorry to barge in like this, and thank you for letting me crash. It'll be nice to see how much Carson has grown since I last saw him, Charlie said as his head started to nod off from sheer exhaustion. Not much. We're all doomed height-wise, it seems. That's a shame. He really wanted to keep talking, but his body wouldn't let him. I helped him into the spare bed, seeing flashes of bruises on his exposed skin when his sleeves shifted. What on earth had my brother been through? We would talk about it in the morning. I waited this long, a few more hours won't kill me. He fell asleep right away. I left the room, uncertain of how I was feeling. It felt a bit odd that I accepted everything he told me so quickly. Logically, I should have doubted the crazy story a little more. If it came from anyone else, I would have. Noise came from down the hall. Carson had woken up and just finished using the washroom. He shuffled back to his room, eyes barely open. As I walked by his door, I heard his tired voice call out. "Why are you awake?" he asked. I had an early morning shift. I should have been in bed. I made a mental note to call in sick. I debated lying and letting him sleep. What if Charlie woke up and walked around the house and Carson saw him? He looked different enough to assume a stranger had broken in. I walked inside his room and closed the door behind me. He sat up, concerned over what might be going on. I sat on the foot of his bed, unsure of where to start. "Your uncle is back," I said, keeping my voice low. Carson's bedroom was near the spare room. I didn't want us to wake up our long-awaited guest. Sensing the odd vibe in the room, Carson controlled his emotions. "Is he not good?" he asked slowly, clearly worried. Yes and no. Mentally, I think he's fine. But it looks like he's been through a few things. He's sleeping right now, so we'll talk in the morning, I explained. Are you okay? Carson asked. Symes smiled at the question. Oddly enough, I was. It felt like a massive weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I knew Charlie was all right. He was that kind of person to be fine no matter what. I found myself wondering where he was or what he was doing nearly every single day. I just hoped Carson didn't suffer in the same way. I reached out and messed up his sandy hair. When did he get so big? His mother wanted nothing to do with us. It was a struggle after my parents died to raise him. And I didn't regret a second of it. Glancing over at his bookshelf, I spotted a few more figures he had added to his collection. It was a mixture of very detailed characters, mechs, and busty girls wearing very little. Okay, so I did regret a tiny fraction of how I raised him. I stood up ready to leave, hoping Carson would be able to sleep with this news. Just as I took a step, an odd rumbling came, then the room shook. I went over to him, sitting on his bed, holding his arm. We didn't live in an area that got earthquakes. It lasted nearly an entire minute. When things settled down, we looked at each other, clearly shaken. What was that? Something crashed? Carson offered. It did sound like something large was being moved. We lived near a highway, so maybe a transport truck caused the noise. Did it hit the house somehow? I got back up and went to the door, opening it. The air was cold. An odd, red, glowing light spilled through the open doorway. I was seeing things. I closed the door again, then opened it once more, expecting things to be different. I was not looking out into the hallway. Instead, I stared off into a foreign alien landscape. The only light source was a deep red glowing ball in the sky, dyeing the twisted scene before us a blood red. It looked like the entire place was covered in thorny trees, some so old they started to crack from age. There was enough space between the trees to walk through. Normally, I didn't like him swearing, but this situation called for it. My mind was racing. Did something follow Charlie here? Was he mixed up in something he forgot to mention? I decided I should just close the door and wait for him to wake up to deal with the problem. That was not in the cards. A vine crawled across the rough stone ground, taking hold of the wood, wrapping around it to keep it open. No matter how much I pulled, I couldn't break the door free from the tight grip. A flash was reflected from a smooth surface as a large blade came down on the vines. The sword buckled and chipped, not meant to actually be used. I stood in shock over my son holding a large, now mostly useless prop weapon. Of course he would have swords. I just hadn't seen them before. I got it at a con. He admitted and tossed the weapon aside. From under his bed, he pulled out a large box, sorting through more swords he had kept hidden. Finally, he pulled out a long katana that looked more authentic than the mostly prop swords in his collection. "Is this what you've been spending your overtime pay on?" I asked, eyebrow raised. He didn't appear embarrassed in the slightest. He attached the katana to his waist with the belt it came with. Then he took another try and sliced the vines off the door. This time it cut without any issue. The issue was that more vines crept back as fast as he could cut them. "What do you want to do?" he asked, holding the sword at his side. I crossed my arms and frowned. "You're dealing with all of this pretty well," I pointed out. "You're not freaking out, which means this is a weird-ass dream, or magic and shit are real and you somehow know about it. And Uncle Charlie came back tonight. The timing between the time things must mean something." He shrugged. Carson wanted magic to be real for his entire life. He wasn't the type to buy crystals and believe in New Age practices. If I were going to be stuck with anyone in this kind of situation, I would be glad it was him. "Yeah, something like the second theory. I don't know much. I think we should wait till Charlie—" My words were cut off by a raspy sound coming from inside the room. I put myself between Carson and the odd noise, fear spiking through my system. A long, thin, clawed hand slid out from under the darkness of the bed. Soon, a dark figure followed, sliding out, the body moving as if it didn't have any bones. It stood up so tall that it bent its neck when it reached the ceiling. The entire shape was made up of tattered black thorns with a bright set of white teeth hidden behind them. "Amuse me." It spoke in a way I thought spiders might sound if they could form words. "Run!" I didn't need to be told twice. Grabbing Carson's arm, I took off into the odd landscape, catching sharp branches against my skin as we bolted. He did try to slash out at the monster while on the move. His sword did nothing to the nightmare chasing so close behind. The ground under us dipped, and my foot slipped. It was a miracle Carson kept the sword up and away from either of us as we slid down a small slope. Countless bones of different animals littered the bottom of where we landed. At least we lost the monster for now. Glancing up to double-check we weren't followed, I forced my racing heart to slow down. Carson was fine, just shaken. "Hand over the sword," I said, trying to put on my best dad voice. He pulled it away from my outstretched hand, refusing. "I have more experience with it," he pointed out. "You can teach me," I countered. He shook his head, refusing. He was an adult now, taller than me and stronger. I knew he would be better at fighting monsters. I was still his father. Even thinking of him facing that creature was too much to bear. I can handle this. You need to trust me. We didn't have time to stand around and talk. The sleek-backed creature appeared at the top of the hill, the shape slithering its way toward us. We wisely started to run again. Sharp bones under our feet, cutting into thin socks. I wished I were facing this creature with any kind of weapon and not in my PJs. Seeing a sturdy piece of bone on the ground, I picked it up just in time. The long clawed hand came down on my shoulder, the nails ripping into my shirt. I brought the broken bone down into the cracks between the creature's thorns as it howled and backed away. Only for a moment. It darted around almost too fast to follow. A teeth-chattering cackling echoed through the air. I'll enjoy taking you apart piece by piece. It hissed as the claws came down again. I got in front of Carson to take the slash. Thankfully, the wounds were minor. This thing was going to take its time with us. What the hell are you? What do you want from us? Carson demanded. He pressed his back against mine, sword in front of him. He slashed at the creature when it got too close, making it keep its distance for now. Charlie, no, Moore, as this thing called him, walked over with a purpose. He placed a foot on the monster's back, pinning it to the spot. I found myself scared of him. I never thought my kind brother could look or sound like this. If you ever even think of my family again, I'll bring the full power of the first night onto your head, he said, his voice steady, hiding a held-back rage. You can't. Fee would never, the monster spoke, sounding almost pathetic. Whenever Charlie threatened it with something, it was enough to make the creature let out a yelp. He lifted his foot to let it scramble away into the shadows of the night. When he turned, his face shifted back into the brother I knew. I'm so sorry. I thought the barrier I set up was good enough. This is my fault. He started and hurried over to us, checking on how bad the wounds were. I started. This wasn't okay. I knew this wasn't his fault, and I shouldn't be angry at him. Will this ever happen again? I demanded. He paused, then shook his head. He would use every ounce of his new power to protect us. I knew that for certain. And from the sounds of things, he had a lot of it to throw around. Valet, can you help my brother? He's cut up, Charlie said, and I followed his eyeline. I'm man enough to admit I screamed when I saw a massive wolf standing on two legs suddenly behind me. I went in front of Carson, protecting him, my stupid son peeking over my shoulder to get a better look. The beast had dark fur and what looked like a covering over its face with a single eye painted on the white fabric. After I finished screaming, the wolf disappeared as if it had never been there. He's shy, Charlie said. Okay, sure, whatever. A shy werewolf. After what I'd seen tonight, I could handle that. After we all got settled down, Charlie reintroduced us to his wolf friend. As scary as Violet looked, he was kind and soft-spoken. His tribe focused on making medical spells and treatments. He offered me a lotion that mostly healed the cuts I'd gotten that night. After that was sorted, we let Carson mostly speak to the wolf with stars in his eyes. Again, I'm sorry. I was tired and didn't protect the house properly, Charlie said as he leaned against the house. The sun was starting to rise. He looked better than when I saw him last. The short nap did him a world of good. Why didn't you kill that thing? You could have, I pointed out, watching the sky change colors. I made an example out of it. I don't think a lot of monsters will mess with you after it sees how badly I took that thing apart. He answered back almost coldly. He had changed since he was gone. It was hard to accept. My little, short-tempered, stupid brother turned into a person I no longer knew. I took a deep breath, collecting my thoughts. I still loved him. I always would. The guy you're chasing better be like really, really hot, I said, smiling at him. He raised a hand, shaking it with a very non-committal answer. Well, at least he would be within Charlie's league. Hey, kiddo, I need to go. Wrap up with Valak in a few minutes. That got a whine from Carson. He had so much more he wanted to talk about. Even with his face mostly covered, I could tell the wolf was exhausted from the conversation. His large body shifted into one that was more wolf-like instead of a wolf standing on two legs. Charlie easily climbed onto his back as if it were natural. "I promise I'll stay in touch," he said, petting the dark fur of his ride. "You gotta. I have so many questions. Come by more often, too. I'll help fight off any monsters that mess with us. Oh, and bring a Mothman next time," Carson chattered on. Charlie raised an eyebrow but nodded, agreeing to those conditions. I hated seeing him go again. This time, I had some answers. I didn't fully understand what kind of world he found himself in. All I knew was that he could handle himself. He was my dear little brother after all.
"Hey, kiddo," I called from the kitchen. "How was Vampire Club?" My son Damien closed the door with a groan. "We're not a club, Father. We're a coven." "Sorry," I grinned. "But did you have fun?" Damien scoffed, parting his freshly dyed black bangs. "It's not fun," he said. "We're immortal companions performing dark rituals." "Well, is Mr. Immortal hungry?" I chuckled, offering him a plate. "I made tacos." "Whatever," Damien said, turning with an annoyed huff. "You'll understand soon enough, mortal." As he stomped away to his bedroom, I sat there alone, half amused, half worried. Damien and I used to be close, but after his mother died, things changed. He became distant. He spent hours alone in his room reading about vampires and demons, just like his mom used to. Soon he'd formed a crew of other goths who liked dressing up and playing Dracula. I was just happy he had friends again, though I worried he was taking it a bit too seriously. As night began to fall, I went to check on Damien in his room. But as my hand hovered over the doorknob, I overheard him on the phone. "We're ready," he whispered. "Of course it'll work," Damien barked after a pause, trying to sound confident despite the hesitation in his voice. "It has to." "Yes," he said after a moment. "We gather soon." I knocked. "Enter." "You all right, bud?" I asked, sitting beside him on the bed. Damien said nothing for a moment, just stared at his phone. "Father, could I gather the coven here?" "Sure. I'll order pizza." "Really?" Damien asked, a little surprised. I smiled. For the first time in a long time, so did he. "Thanks, Dad." The following night, Damien's coven sat in my living room munching on pepperoni. There was a girl called Night Pain and her brothers, Ball and Chain. They all addressed Damien as sire. I tried not to laugh. "Come, brethren," Damien cried, rising to his feet. "The final ritual awaits." The kids retreated to the garage after dinner. I began hearing chanting and a sound like rattling chains. Suddenly, the chanting stilled, replaced by a scream. "Dad, help!" I ran to the garage, throwing open the door to a darkened room. "Damien, what?" Something smashed into my skull from behind. The lights switched on, with Damien and his crew above me, gardening tools in hand. "Blood, blood, blood," chanted Ball and Chain as Night Pain licked her lips. "Damien," I demanded, "what is this?" "Sorry, Father. To complete the transformation, we require human blood." "We'll be real vampires," he said, raising a spade high over his head. "And I can bring Mom back." The rest happened quickly. A few moments later, Damien stood trembling, showered in crimson. "How?" he stammered, as I ripped Ball's heart from his chest. "Oh, son," I sighed, young blood dripping from my fangs. "You're just like your mother. So much to learn." Yes, it probably sounds insane. I should start with the backstory. But God, how hard it is to remember the simple, happy times before everything that happened. I met my wife, Catherine, when she was 24 and I was 28. We lived in a small town in Kentucky. You'd have trouble finding it even with a map, and the population was tiny. Everyone knew each other. I'd worked as an electrician all my life, first at a factory, then I started my own small business, repairs, wiring, private jobs. My love life had never really worked out until I met her. She worked as an elementary school teacher, smiled at every child, was kind and polite to everyone. My Catherine was the only ray of light in the darkness around me. I loved her for her simplicity. She could find joy in the most ordinary things: morning coffee, the smell of wet grass, a cheap movie on the couch. We didn't have much money, but we had peace, a home, a dog, and that feeling that everything was right, that everything would be fine. I spent evenings fixing things while she wrote lesson plans or knitted. Sometimes we'd sit in silence, listening to crickets, or stay up all night talking about everything and nothing, thinking about children and what we'd name them. Back then, it felt like life had finally found its meaning. The problems began maybe 2 months ago. At first, small things. She started having trouble sleeping, then began looking at me strangely, as if something in my face disturbed her. I asked if everything was okay, and she laughed. "Sorry, just tired. The kids at school are driving me crazy." Gradually, though I can't even say exactly when, it got worse. She slept less, not because she had insomnia, but because she was afraid to fall asleep. I asked her what was wrong, but she said she was fine. Still, when we lay together, she'd suddenly get up and go into another room, returning only at dawn. She started having nightmares, but never told me what they were. One day, I lost my temper. "You have to understand, I was just worried about my wife. From the lack of sleep, she started to look worse. Dark circles under her eyes, pale skin. She lost weight, and every time I tried to help, she pushed me away. So I sat her down across from me and directly asked her what she was dreaming about. She was silent for a long time, trembling and glancing at me furtively, as if she was afraid. And then, when tears began to roll down her cheeks, she whispered, "There's a man in my dreams. God, I'm scared, Tom." I went to hug her, and when I reached for her, she flinched, as if I'd frightened her. After that, things seemed to get better, or so I thought. How wrong I was. She used to ask how my day went, but now she just stared out the window. With each passing day, she spoke to me less and less, her words short and dry, and then she'd go to the bathroom or kitchen for some errands, closing the door behind her. And it wasn't just the silence, her eyes had changed. If before they were green, emerald-like, full of life and love, now her gaze made my spine go cold. There wasn't anger or hatred there. No, it was something closer to mistrust, wariness, as if she was seeing me for the first time. Over the next week, I began to feel anxious, a strange burning under my skin, as if something was wrong, but I couldn't tell where the crack was, until I realized she was studying me. When I drank coffee, I could feel her eyes on me. I'd look up, and she'd immediately turn away, pretending to slice fruit, but her fingers trembled, and the knife froze halfway to the board. I'd step outside for a smoke, and when I turned around, I'd see her peeking through the curtain, then she'd instantly close it. When I showered, I'd catch her watching me, studying my body, then she'd run away. She started doing it even while I slept. She almost stopped talking to me, instead writing something in a notebook and hiding it as soon as I entered the room. Photos began to disappear from their frames. She'd talk on the phone with someone but hang up the moment I came in. I made an appointment with a psychologist for us, but she refused, said she was afraid to be near me. It all happened so suddenly. It seemed just yesterday we were stargazing in each other's arms, and now this. The strangeness grew every day. Sometimes she asked me to sleep on the couch. I agreed, hoping it would calm her, but it was useless. Her paranoia only worsened. It got to the point where, when I tried to hug her, she screamed, "Don't come near me," and flinched as if I'd hit her. After one of those nights, I decided I had to find out what was really going on, even if it meant taking her to a doctor afterward. I pretended to be asleep when she stood in the hallway. Then she slowly approached, soft, careful steps. She stopped at the foot of the bed, and for several seconds there was a dead silence, broken only by her uneven breathing. I could feel her watching, not just watching, comparing. That's when I became truly terrified, a cold dread twisting inside me as my wife became something I couldn't recognize. Then the bed shifted slightly. She sat down on the edge. The air grew heavy. I could feel her stare physically, like pressure on my skin. Then her cold fingers gently touched my wrist, held it for a few seconds, then quickly let go as if burned, and whispered, "Pulse, faster than Tom's." My heart clenched so hard I nearly twitched. She leaned closer. I could hear her breathing against my face, short, shaky. She smelled of lavender and something sour that made goosebumps crawl down my back. Her lips barely moved. I remember clearly. Tom had a small scar right here. She touched my cheek. But you don't. I clenched my teeth to keep from gasping. Those few seconds of silence lasted an eternity. What scar? I never had a scar on my cheek. I'd know if I did. I wanted to sink into the ground and scream all at once, but I kept lying still until I heard a choked sob and her fading footsteps. The door slammed. I opened my eyes, my heart pounding furiously. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night, too afraid to close my eyes. In the morning, I went to work early, dreading the hours until my shift ended. That evening, over dinner, I said, "Kate, we need to talk. What's going on?" She gripped her fork so tightly her knuckles turned white, then looked me dead in the eye. "Tom, you've been acting strange." "What do you mean?" "I don't know. Sometimes you look different. Sometimes your voice sounds wrong. You even smell different." I didn't know what to say. My head was chaos, and somehow I just laughed. "Kate, maybe you're just imagining things?" "I don't know, Tom." My eyes fell on the knife rack. There was a clean strip of dust where the largest kitchen knife should have been, the one we used for everything, bread, meat, anything. I distinctly remembered it being there before that night. My heart slammed into my throat with a primal panic. I looked at Kate and she was staring right at me. I wanted to speak, but couldn't. It hit me then. My wife might be planning to kill me. The next morning she left for work, and I, like a caged animal, started searching the house. I hadn't slept in nearly 48 hours. I know I should have just left or taken her to a hospital, but she's my wife. I love her. She has to see that I am me. I tore through the apartment, frantic, desperate for something, anything that would help me understand what was happening to her. And I did. After about an hour, in the back of the closet, behind a pile of sweaters, I found her wooden box, old, slightly cracked. The lid was ajar, and when I opened it, a thick notebook fell into my hands. It smelled of coffee and sweat. Her initials on the cover, written in her neat cursive. My heart froze as I realized it was the diary she'd been hiding from me. The paper bent under my fingers, her handwriting familiar, but this time jagged, shaky, the page stained with what looked like tears. He's sleeping. I stand by the bed and watch him. He looks like Tom, but he's not. Tom had a scar on his left hand from that accident by the river. This one's skin is smooth. He smiles, but the smile doesn't reach his eyes. Something replaced him. I keep counting days, marking steps. If the real Tom, my husband, is alive, where is he? A wave of nausea rose in my throat. With each page, her handwriting grew more erratic. I tested his speech. He says, "I love you," in the same tone, but without warmth, not like before. Tom smelled of vanilla, but this one smells of dust and cheap cologne. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My knees trembled. The air around me tightened like a noose. I flipped to the last page. I can't let this thing stay in our house. It wears his smile, his name. I tried talking to it, begging, but it just smiled and said all the right words. It didn't defend itself. Maybe because it isn't afraid. Its right hand twitches when it lies. I could have killed it today, but for some reason I couldn't. I know I have to. For Tom, I won't let some monster wear his skin. My hands were slick with sweat. My whole body was sweating even though the room was cold. I placed the diary on the bed and sat down, trying to process everything I'd just read. An accident. God, she was exaggerating. All that came out of it was a concussion and some bruised ribs. I stayed in the hospital for about a week. Yeah, 7 days. Then my phone rang, making me jump. It was Sheriff Martin, a kind old man I'd known for years. "Tom, everything all right over there? Catherine called, said someone's living in your house pretending to be her husband." I froze. "What did you say?"
Says you're not you. I've known her for years. Always seems stable. Domestic quarrel, huh? No. Just stress. She's tired. Evening came slowly. I sat on the couch, elbows on my knees, looking at an old photograph, the one that used to sit on our mantel before all this. Catherine and I by the lake, smiling, her arms around me, the sun so bright that day we had to squint. I stared at us, at the little details, her blonde hair catching the light, her hand around mine, the green shimmer in our eyes. It felt like a lifetime ago. When the door creaked open, I nearly jumped. My wife's, if I can still call her that, steps were slow and tired, her bag thudding softly to the floor. She looked exhausted, her eyes red, her hair a mess. I stood, holding the diary. "Kate, we need to talk." She looked at me warily, like a trapped animal sensing a snare. "What's that in your hand?" Her voice was even, but something trembled in it. I found this. I need to understand what's happening," I said, showing her the diary. Catherine froze. For a moment, I thought she'd break down crying, but instead, she slowly stepped closer, looking straight into my face, her cold breath brushing against my skin. "So what did you figure out, Tom? That I'm crazy? You think I've lost my mind, don't you?" "No. You wrote that I've been replaced, that I don't have a scar." She turned away, her lips pressed tight. "Tom had one. We even joked it made him look tougher." "Listen, sweetheart." I took a step closer, a strange knot tightening in my gut. "I'm the same man. I remember everything. How we met, the candles at our wedding, how you laugh when we watch comedies, what you said about that stupid show when we finished it. I remember everything, Catherine. It's me."
She stared at me, unblinking, her shoulders trembling as if she were freezing. I looked into her eyes, and there was something there, pain and horror mixed together, as if I stood before her as someone both familiar and wrong. "You say it Like you've rehearsed it," she whispered. "Because it's true." I stepped closer, my voice cracking into a shout. "What do I have to do for you to believe me? What?" Catherine said nothing, just breathed heavily like she was fighting herself, staring into my eyes. Then she suddenly backed away, step by step toward her bag. I didn't realize what was happening at first. She bent down, as if for a handkerchief, and in the next moment, I saw the glint of metal. A knife. The missing one. "Kate?" I breathed, disbelieving. "Catherine, put it down." "Stop. Stop pretending, you monster." I managed half a step toward her. She raised her hand. At first, I thought she was only threatening me. Panic tightened my fists. I wanted to yell, to grab her shoulders, to make her listen, but then a strike. Burning pain slashed through my chest. Everything went white. The last thing I saw was her face, so familiar, twisted by terror and despair at once. She stood over me, her hand trembling, her lips whispering something like, "Tom, where are you, my love?" And then everything went dark. I woke up in a hospital. At first, nothing but fog, then the smell of antiseptic, the faint beep of a monitor, unfamiliar voices. I tried to move my head. Pain shot through my body. The doctor explained I'd lost a lot of blood, but somehow survived. The knife missed my heart by an inch. Catherine had run away. I listened, not believing any of it was real. A couple of days later, Martin came by. I told him everything about the knife, the diary, her thinking I wasn't me. He listened, frowning, taking notes. When he finished and was about to leave, he turned back. "Didn't expect this from Catherine. Don't worry, we'll find her. When you're discharged, come by my place. I got some Cuban cigars from a friend. We'll relax a bit." Without thinking, I said, "I don't smoke." He frowned, about to say something, but then just nodded and left, closing the door behind him. For several minutes I lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to come to terms with everything that had happened. Then I noticed a small mirror in the corner of the room. I looked at my reflection and froze. My face was pale, my lips dry. But that wasn't what caught my attention. Interesting. Can eyes change color from green to blue?